All right, welcome. Just a warning, tomorrow will be a busy day for you. I know it's Friday, and don't grouse at me when I'm going to tell you what's going on. The good news is I will not be briefing. Okay? However, at 11:30, Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, will be at the Security Council stakeout to speak about the situation in the Middle East and Gaza, and he will take some questions. Okay? Then at noon, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the Undersecretary General for Peace Operations, will be here in this room to speak to you about his recent travels to the Middle East. Then at 12:45, some things are beyond my control. At 12:45, our Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, since she was so pleased by the welcome you gave her yesterday, will return to brief you on the launch of the Secretary General's debt recommendations ahead of the Sevilla conference. She will be joined virtually by Rebecca Greenspan, the head of UN Trade and Development, and as well as the Secretary General's expert group on debt. Okay? All right. Thank you. What? Oh, and I forgot to bring my charter to show to you because today is in UN Charter Day. I have a charter from 1948 on my desk, which is a little battered. No. I know it when it was signed. I'm saying it was the one I have was printed in 48. Yeah. It's a little battered, but it's on my desk. As you may have heard, and some of you already have reported on, the Secretary General spoke at the Special General Assembly session this morning. And he said that the UN Charter is a declaration of hope and the foundation of international cooperation for a better world. And from day one, he added, the United Nations has been a force for the construction in a world often marked by destruction. Mr. Guterres said that upholding the purposes and principles of the Charter is a never-ending mission, but he warned that today we see assaults on the purposes and the principles of the Charter like never before. And on, he said, we see all too familiar pattern. Follow when the Charter suits, ignore when it does not. But the Secretary General said the Charter of the United Nations is not optional. It is not an a la carte menu. We cannot and must not normalize violations of its most basic principles. He urged all member states to live up to the spirit and letter of the Charter, to the responsibility it demands, and to the future it summons us all to build. Turning to the situation in Gaza, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that civilians continue to be killed and they continue to be injured daily, whether in Israeli airstrikes, shelling, or while just trying to find food for their families. These tragic events must not be accepted as normal ever. This afternoon, our partners working on health reported a mass casualty incident following a strike in Deir al-Balah, with Al-Aqsa Hospital said to have received more than 20 people killed and some 70 injured. Additional wounded patients were transferred to Nasser Medical Complex and 2 other medical facilities. Our partners working on health also tell us that an increase in preventable diseases is being seen. In just the past 2 weeks alone, over 19,000 cases of acute watery diarrhea have been recorded, alongside over 200 cases each of acute jaundice syndrome and bloody diarrhea. These outbreaks are directly linked to the lack of clean water, the lack of sanitation in Gaza, underscoring the urgent need for fuel, the urgent need for medical supplies, the urgent need for water, the urgent need for sanitation, and the urgent need for hygiene items. All of this to prevent any further spread of the collapse of the public health system, which is already in dire situation. In a social media post, the World Health Organization noted that yesterday it delivered the first medical shipment into Gaza since March 2nd, when Israeli imposed full blockade on the Strip. 9 trucks carrying essential medical supplies, some 2,000 units of blood, and 1,500 units of plasma were transported from Karim Shalom. These supplies will be distributed to priority hospitals in the coming days. The blood and plasma was delivered to Nasser Medical Complex cold storage facility for onward distribution to other hospitals facing critical shortages among the growing influx of patients we've been speaking about. However, WHO reminds us that all these medical supplies are only a drop in the ocean of what is actually needed. OCHA stresses that to meet humanitarian needs and help reduce looting, it's essential to get more humanitarian and essential commercial goods into Gaza and to facilitate their safe distribution across the Gaza Strip. This means an increasing the volume of supplies allowed through multiple crossings and multiple routes. OCHA colleagues tell us that yesterday, 6 out of 17 attempts to coordinate humanitarian movements inside Gaza were outright rejected by the Israeli authorities. These planned UN missions, including trucking water and repairing roads. 9 other attempts, which included the removal of solid waste and collection of cargo from crossings, were facilitated by the Israeli authorities, while 2 additional attempts were impeded. The continuing restrictions on humanitarian access are severely undermining life-saving operations. Turning to the West Bank, I can tell you that we are gravely concerned about escalating violence there, and we condemn the attacks by Israeli settlers against Palestinians. Yesterday, OCHA documented an attack where 3 Palestinians were killed and others injured. That happened when hundreds of settlers, including armed people accompanied by Israeli forces, raided the villages of Kafir Malik in Ramallah governorate and set fire to homes with people inside. In another attack yesterday, about 20 settlers set fire to farmland in another village, Asira al-Kibliya in Nablus governorate. We reiterate once again our call on Israel to protect civilians in the West Bank and humanitarian personnel. International law must be respected, and those responsible for these attacks must be held to account. Moving north to UNIFIL, where our peacekeepers there continue to observe IDF presence and military activities, including 3 airstrikes yesterday in the peacekeepers' area of operations. UNIFIL peacekeepers also continue to discover unauthorized weapons and ammunition caches in their area of operations, including on June 23rd, when UNIFIL detected an unguarded weapons cache containing boxes of ammunitions and explosives in Sector East. Since the cessation of hostilities came into effect in November of last year, our peacekeepers have detected 272 unauthorized weapons caches and have referred all of them to the Lebanese army. UNIFIL yesterday also hosted a meeting of cessation of hostilities mechanisms at the UN premises in Ras Nakora in the south. That was chaired by the United States in the presence of the Lebanese armed forces, the Israeli Defense Forces, and representatives of France. In the past weeks, UNIFIL deminers have also completed clearance of unexploded ordnance at 2 UN positions along the Blue Line in Sector West. In total, 6,260 square meters of land were cleared at these 2 positions. UNIFIL also working with the Lebanese Mine Action Center to start humanitarian demining in its area of operations. Turning to Ukraine, our colleagues there tell us that deadly hostilities continued, with yesterday seeing action in frontline areas. The regions of Donetsk, Kherson, Sumy were among the hardest hit, with several civilians killed and injured. This is according to what authorities are telling us. Attacks also damaged homes and civilian infrastructure. More than 400 people were displaced in a single day, mostly in Donetsk and Sumy area. Our colleagues tell us the humanitarian situation in the towns of Konstantinivka and Pokrovsk in the Donetsk region continue to deteriorate. Local authorities report that constant shelling has left parts of both towns without electricity and access to basic services. Authorities and aid organizations are providing limited water and food assistance, but access is increasingly restricted. Authorities also continue to call on the remaining population, which is more than 10,000 people combined to evacuate for their own safety. Still in the Donetsk regions, humanitarian access to towns of Chasiv Yar and Torets remain extremely limited amid intensified attacks. According to authorities, yesterday alone, nearly 340 people, including children, were evacuated from the Donetsk region. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that food insecurity remains a concern in frontline and border regions. A recent assessment by the World Food Programme and the UN Food and Agriculture Organization found that the war has devastated livelihoods and quadrupled poverty levels, leaving the most vulnerable, particularly displaced people, at greatest risk. From January to May, nearly 130 organizations provided food and livelihood assistance to 1.8 million people across the country. Nearly 400,000 people in Donetsk and Kherson regions receive food support, agricultural supports, and cash aid. Just to flag that at 1 p.m. in the Security Council, Jean-Pierre Lacroix is scheduled to brief on the Central African Republic. That will be at 3 p.m. We will share those remarks with you. Also, Volker Turk wrapped up a 3-day visit to Sri Lanka. While there, he met with the President Disanyake, and the Prime Minister, Amara Surya, and the Chief Justice, the Attorney General, and other officials, as well as civil society representatives, survivors of human rights abuses, and, of course, the UN team. Mr. Turk visited the recently reopened mass grave at Chemani. He said it was a compelling reminder that the past still haunts the lives of so many in Sri Lanka and presents a daunting challenge for the new government. The High Commissioner said it was important to build on the momentum and to translate it to tangible results, stressing that acknowledgement and truth-telling are important steps towards healing and closure, and we, as is justice, reparation, and non-recurrence. Today is also the International Day against drug abuse and illicit trafficking. In a message, the Secretary General called on all to recommit to ending drug abuse and trafficking, in uniting to dismantle criminal networks and break the cycle of suffering and destruction once and for all. A report released by the UN Office of Drugs and Crime warns that a new era of global instability has intensified challenges in addressing the world drug problem, empowering organized crime, and pushing drug use to historically high levels. According to the report, production, seizures, and use of cocaine hit new highs in 2023, making cocaine the world's fastest growing illicit drug market. More information online. And today is also the International Day of Support of Victims of Torture. The observance serves as a call to action for all stakeholders, including UN member states, civil society, individuals everywhere, to unite in support of hundreds of thousands of people around the world who've been victims of torture and who are still being tortured today. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. Rafael Grossi, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, told the Security Council that nobody would really be able to judge the impact of any strikes at nuclear facilities in Iran until IAEA inspectors were able to return. Have IAEA inspectors been given a green light to return?
That is a good question, but that is a question to be asked of the IAEA. I'm not aware. Benno, then Amélie, then Deji, then Sherwin.
I can follow up with Mr. Grossi. He told French radio today, that centrifuges in Fordo for the uranium enrichment plant in Iran are no longer operational. That was just an interview. Can you confirm that assessment? Is that also your assessment? I guess.
No, I think let's be clear. IAEA is the part of the UN that has the technical knowledge and know-how on nuclear issues. They're in the lead on the Iran nuclear program. Those questions have to be asked to them.
Yeah, so, but I mean, like, they report to you, I guess, right?
No, they do not. It's a standalone specialized agency. So, I mean, obviously, some of our colleagues have been briefed, but they need to speak on the record, and they have. So it's not something I can share with you.
Okay, but then can you educate me why Mr. Grossi would give that information to a French radio instead of actually releasing a press release?
I think this is a question you need to ask of him. I can't educate you on anything, Benno. Let's see if I can educate Amélie, and then we'll move on.
Thanks, Steph. It seemed that there was supposed to be peace talks in Brussels today about Sudan with the UN, African Union, and other member states. Do you have anything you can share with us about that?
I can confirm to you that Mr. Lamamra, the Secretary General's personal envoy for Sudan, is participating in what is the fourth session of the Sudan Consultative Group that's meeting in Brussels, and that is to support the de-escalation efforts in Sudan and advance a political solution to this conflict, which has been devastating for millions of Sudanese as we talk about it almost every day. I think that this particular meeting is a critical opportunity to take stock of the international positions and advance a more coordinated approach, which is essential to ending the conflict, and discussing critical and concrete pathways to de-escalation, civilians, and political dialogue, as well as the criticality of humanitarian access, which has been extremely challenging and costing lives of humanitarian workers, as we've seen.
Any participation of the two Sudanese parties?
I'm not aware, but I will check for you. Deji, then Sherwin.
Today, the Speaker of the Parliament of Iran, Mr. Ghalibaf, said on social media, and I quote, "Today, following the approval of the Constitution Guarding Council, the law suspending cooperation with the IAEA was officially communicated." And it also accused IAEA paving war for aggression, and the continued cooperation with IAEA is, what he said, not possible until we are assured of the security of our nuclear facilities. Now, any reaction?
Obviously, we're waiting to see if there's an actual decision taken by the government. What I can tell you is that we support the IAEA's work, which is a critical part of the UN's overall work. And as we've always said, we encourage dialogue and cooperation between the IAEA and the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Has the Secretary General recently have any phone talks with anybody from Iran?
Not in the last few days.
Okay. Second topic. Yesterday, President Trump compares Iranian strikes to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Do you have any comment?
I am not a commentator.
Does the Secretary General agree with his observation?
I'm not going to. It's not for him to agree or disagree. I understand your needs, but I ask you to understand mine.
On that
Sherwin.
topic of understanding your needs,
I don't. Yeah.
on a serious topic, the protests, the anti-government protests in Kenya, we understand that some 16 people have been killed, 400 injured. Rights groups say the majority were shot by the police. Is there any comment on these protests and how the government has responded to them?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously concerned about the violence that we've seen in Kenya. We're closely monitoring the situation. Very saddened by the loss of life. Our human rights colleagues have been particularly focused on the issue of the gunshot wounds that you mentioned. They've also noted that the Independent Policing Oversight Authority of Kenya have said they will launch an investigation. We look forward to an independent and transparent investigation, and it bears reminding that under international law, under human rights law, lethal force by law enforcement, such as firearms, should only be used when strictly necessary in order to protect life or prevent serious injury of an imminent threat.
Second one for you, Steph. Tomorrow, the State Department is hosting the foreign ministers of the DRC and Rwanda to sign what President Trump has called a peace treaty. Some sort of peace deal. Has the United Nations been engaged at all, given your long-standing work in that region towards peace? What do you make of this agreement that seems to have come out of the blue?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we're following it closely. I think some of our colleagues have been are aware of the details. We obviously welcome any agreement that would bring peace and stability to the people of the region. I mean, we talk almost every day about the situation in the eastern part of the DRC and the horrific suffering of civilians, the hunger, the sexual violence, the constant fear, the constant displacement. So anything that would help alleviate that suffering is to be welcome. We obviously thank the U.S. and Qatar, which have been involved in this. And I'll leave it at that. Madam.
Ming Lu from China Daily. So following Iranians' bill to decide to suspend cooperation with IAEA, has the UN been in touch with the IAEA regarding the safety of its inspectors and their abilities to carry out their mandate?
I mean, we are obviously in touch with the IAEA. They're keeping us abreast of their work, but in terms of the technicality of how their staff and all that, those are questions to be asked of the IAEA. Okay. Any questions online? Yes, Abdelhamid.
Yes, I have two questions. Stefan, on Kufr Malik, on Monday there was a boy of 13-year-old was shot and killed by the settlers, and that's what brought the riots. In his funeral, when the settlers came back again and killed 3 more. So I didn't see any reference to that little boy, 13-year-old, Ammar Mu'taz Hamayil, who was shot by the settlers. I wonder why a Palestinian shot and killed.
I mean, unless I'm mistaken, just a few minutes ago, I talked about the escalating violence in the West Bank, our concern, and our clear condemnation of attacks by Israeli settlers against Palestinians. Your next question.
Yesterday in the Security Council, when the Algerian ambassador started to talk, criticizing the report of Virginia Gamba, Mrs. Gamba walked out of the Security Council. We normally seen ambassadors leave the council when a faux ambassador starts speaking, but I think this is the first time a UN official and the meeting is to debate that report. Why she walked out? Is that an acceptable behavior of a UN senior official?
Today regarding Madame Gamba, and I think you checked the transcript, I answered that question, and I would say the same thing today. Any other questions? Thank you. Rest up. Tomorrow you'll have a lot of work, and I won't have that much. Goodbye.